delay.
Just so that the public is aware, we are now streaming online on live stream on YouTube, but we are waiting for our recording, which has paused. Are we ready to go? All right, Ms. Board President.
Good afternoon. I call to order the Gateway Community Charter School Board meeting, 4:45 p.m. The meeting is now called to order. I will do roll call. Roll call. Board members Mark Anderson. Please answer present.
Just give him a second because Jason has to unmute him.
Here.
Board member Harry Block.
Here.
Board member Bruce Mandrick.
Present.
Board member Jack Turner.
Present.
Board member Lily Campbell present. And we welcome our superintendent, Dr. Cindy Peterson, and other cabinet members. Do we have at this time any public comments?
There are no public comments that have been received as of today.
Welcome all of you who have joined us this afternoon for our board members, those who are joining virtual and the cabinet members who are present. Thank you so much for your time and being here with us. So at this point, we will now have our superintendent's update. Item number 3, superintendent's update.
Thank you, Board President Campbell. Appreciate it very much. Thank you for anyone who may be watching us on YouTube in our live stream. We are excited to be a part of our first ever Zoom facilitated board meeting, and appreciate the board and their patience and their willingness to provide governance in this manner. Just a brief update for you. We are continuing to meet as a cabinet and in other small groups almost daily in response to the information we are getting on COVID-19, the state's response, the federal response, and other various forms of information, political, legal, financial, personnel, and other related areas are all updating us on a nearly daily basis. We are taking in that information. We are processing, we are sharing, we are getting as much of that in the hands of our staff as is reasonable without overwhelming them. We are doing planning for the future. So definitely information and resource gathering right now and processing is a big part of all of our jobs in the GCC. Every 2 weeks, some combination of myself and Jason Sample attend calls with County Superintendent, Sacramento County Superintendent Dave Gordon, and other charter leaders where we are being updated in relation to Sacramento County responses educationally, which has been a new and evolving role that the superintendent has had with us. We are going to have a sharing with you today on what each school's distance learning rollout plan was when we went into closure on March 13th. It will be like the initial plan. It will be somewhat basic in nature, but give you a school by school sense of what was done. And then we will be providing you a much more comprehensive plan at a later board meeting about what they have developed this week to take them to the end of the year, now that we know that we are in fact closed through the end of the school year. We are very, very proud of every one of our administrators, every one of our teachers, all of our staff. They have been heroes. They have been working above, beyond. Our central office staff working remotely they're just doing amazing work. So there's not an area in our organization where we have a concern where amazing things haven't happened to ensure that our students and our staff have everything they need to be successful in these difficult times. So we really want to let the board know that they have much to be proud of in relation to our staff at our sites and in our central office. We have continued just kind of per the amount of information we've received to provide some form of communication to the board, the principals, the the families and all staff messages every Friday at this point. It kind of just started that way organically based on changes that were happening that quickly. And now we believe we're going to continue that as a best practice to keep us all connected and together and on the same page. And I think it's been highly appreciated by everyone as a way to bring us together. Last Friday, on Good Friday, Jason and his team put together a really nice quote unquote good thing special edition. If you didn't see it, it had some really good pictures of what's going on in our organization for distance learning. Also, the community engagement team continues to attend virtual town hall meetings, host information meetings, have radio sessions, really giving our parents a great deal of information, support, and understanding during this time. And particularly Sergey has done a nice job in that area, also working with our parent liaisons to ensure that they are fulfilling that role as well. We have had, as I mentioned above, both webinars, Zoom meetings, conference calls in the area of legal, human resources, compliance. Recently, I have become a part of some conference calls on a weekly basis with the Access Superintendents Council that have been quite deep, rich, and engaging regarding this world that we're in right now. All of this is helping our organization to not only be connected, but to have a level playing field with what everyone around us knows, and to be trying to be on the best practice forefront of our responses to such things. We also are continuing our commitment to growth during this time. So we, believe it or not, are still doing at least 4 to 5 book studies and doing them in a new format. So the principals group is deep into a book called Building Equity. We did chapter 3 today. And you will remember that we have a significant contract with Hanover Research to really begin some deep work in equity. We've passed an equity policy. We're working on an equity strategic plan that includes inclusion and other factors as well. So we're really excited about this work going forward. We had quite a discussion today about this and how it fits within the system of the other key work that we're doing. The central administration team is still reading The Big Potential. And I know that the team with the next chapter, which I think is chapter 7, is deep in preparation for how they are going to present their chapter to us at the next central admin team meeting next week. Our extended cabinet group, which is all of our directors and above, we just had our meeting, I don't know, 2 days ago, I think. And we are working through a book called The Language of Appreciation. And it is really been a nice topic. This week we talked about gifts, tangible gifts. Whose appreciation language might be tangible gifts, and what does that mean? And had some good, healthy discussions around that. Select members of cabinet are reading another book on equity called Shattering Inequities, which will probably become the base for some of our principal learning for next year, taking equity to the next level. So kind of excited about that. And then you will remember that we have, and the board has approved us to go forward with Saba Sac City on a material revision to their charter regarding location. We just want the board to know that that has been a long and lengthy process. December, January, February, March, April. And we are really no further along than we were in December in terms of we've turned it in, but Sac City has not been able to really respond in any manner of detail to our request. We are continuing to follow up, but we are informing the board at this time that with COVID-19, with the budget information that you're going to hear about later today, and some other variables that we are aware of, it is our expressed belief that we are going to take back our material revision request and not move forward into the smart and final lease that we had considered and that you had approved us to go into. It is our thought at this time that we can be good partners with the city of Sacramento at the Sim Center, because they too will be having financial difficulties, and that we can find a way that serves the city, ourselves, and our students, and does not rely on what has not been the best of customer service and information from Sac City at this time. Jason, before I go into the other items, did I represent that the way we had talked about?
Yes, you did. That's correct.
Okay, just wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything there. We have not figured this out yet. We were in two other big book studies, the Crucial Conversations book study that we are in the 21st cohort for, I think, 20th or 21st cohort. So we have to finish out that book study. We haven't figured that one out quite yet. We are trying to figure out how to do the videos via Zoom and finish that out this year. And then we have one more meeting of our Unselfie book study, which Christine and I have been doing around the social emotional learning. Kind of excited about that. And then Hanover Research, I've talked to you about. We are providing them with the data. We are doing the book study, and we are looking forward to a call this week on how we can kind of shift a little of this into maybe doing what we wanted to do in Zoom, possibly also digitally. So that is the superintendent's update at this point, Miss Lily.
Thank you. And it's amazing how busy you've been through all of this. Still just mind-boggling what you've seemed to accomplish at this time with staff. And we do appreciate all of the information that you've been given to us. I know I do for sure. So I really want to thank you. Board members, any board member, any comments from any of you at this time?
I don't see any hands raised.
No hands raised, no. Seeing no hands raised, we will continue to move on.
Can I just ask a clarifying question?
Yeah.
Mr. Sample, did we plan to, do the board members have their own copy of the agenda? Is that how they are viewing the agenda?
They are viewing the agenda through the Agenda Online system.
Okay.
We will look at other ways to provide that information if needed.
Okay, perfect. Thank
I
you.
do have my iPad with me, so you will see me using that. So with that, we are now moving into the study session. And the first one is District Learning Update. So, Madam Superintendent,
That
who's on for
is
that?
our newest assistant superintendent, I believe, and our not so newest assistant superintendent. So our two assistant superintendents, Michael and Christine, are going to update the board on that. They are a killer team on this.
All right, thank you.
All right, so I'm very happy to be here this evening to share with you our digital learning update for GCC. This update will kind of give you an idea of what it was like in the 2 weeks before spring break, what schools were doing, and then the direction they're heading now. So now that we know we're going to be distance learning for the rest of the school year, we've kind of altered our plans over the break, solicited feedback from parents, students, and teachers. And then they're coming up with a plan that we are reviewing, refining, and we will bring to the board for approval formally, probably at our next meeting. So we're just giving you an overview right now of what's going on, and then we'll give you sort of the formal process to approve those at our next meeting so that we can make those public documents. Okay, let's see. I pushed the space bar, Jason. It's not advancing. I don't have the controls to move it forward, I don't think. All right.
No, yes.
All right. So we know at CCCS, they have two programs. They have their kindergarten through 8th grade program, which is a 4-day-a-week on-site program and 1-day-a-week off-site. And so when they started this process, they had already been using learning packets on Fridays for families. And so basically what they did was they transitioned to having learning packets and Chromebook distribution to all students right away. They were ensuring and resolving technology issues, making students making sure they had access at home, and they were checking in with families to make sure that that was happening in the 2 weeks. Upon returning and what they're transitioning to, as you can see, each teacher has time on Zoom with their whole class, 2 hours per week. They use Class Dojo, which is an interactive media that they've used already with parents. So parents are already familiar with Class Dojo. They can send and receive messages. They can share information on that. And then they have that must do and may do structure for assignments. So some of the feedback we've gotten from families, and I've even seen it on the news, it's that parents are overwhelmed with the amount of work children are being asked to do. And so we got that feedback from our constituents as well. And so they really want to respond to that and say, these are the core elements of what we want you to do. And these are some other things you can do as add-ons. And then they are also planning and working a plan to support their English learners, students with IEPs, and also supporting students socially and emotionally through this process by doing check-ins and continuing the work they were doing on social emotional learning during the school year. I see it now. All right, in the 9 through 12 arena at CCCS, we knew that they were already using an online curriculum called Edgenuity. So all of their students had a Chromebook issued to them and already had access either at home, either through Wi-Fi or through a Kajit, which is a little Wi-Fi server that we give to them. So in the 2 weeks since school closed prior to spring break, they just continued with Edgenuity and the other existing elements of their program. So what they've added now are very clear expectations for students in terms of the daily work they're doing, weekly connections with all staff, including teachers and paraeducators, and then their support staff, their RSP, their paraeducators, curriculum coaches are there to provide support, monitor progress, reach out to students who are maybe not interacting with Edgenuity because them not coming to school, sometimes they get a little disconnected. So they're making sure they reach out to them. And you can see they're also developed an EL support lab 2 times per week. And then their fall semester course for students whose academic progress is impacted. So again, the idea is to hold harmless these students, but we really want to keep them engaged, especially those students that are credit deficient. We want to make sure they're making up credits in this time. And also those students on track to graduate, we want to really make sure that they are still on track to graduate. At COA Elementary, they worked very hard at the very beginning to create packets for families. They were not doing as much online. They are one-to-one on school site, but students don't bring their Chromebooks home. And so what they did was they issued learning packets to students, and they were working on ensuring that all students had access to technology and internet, and they were updating families throughout that process. So since then, they are transitioning to specific student teacher expectation for each grade level. They're making sure that families do have a Chromebook if they need one at home to access technology. Some of the families have 2, 3 children, maybe even 4 at home. So maybe they had 1 computer, but now they need 2 or 3. And so they have made sure that they're sharing technology with them. All of their curriculum is posted online for families, but they also have learning packets available if the families are having trouble with technology. And they're also collaborating and working with their specialty teachers to provide really neat art lessons, science lesson, project lead the way lessons, as well as their special education and ELD teachers to support those students as necessary. At COA Middle, we all already heard a presentation earlier in the year by Principal Jannard that they have been one-to-one, and they started that last school year. So students were already familiar with taking home Chromebooks, taking care of them, accessing and utilizing Google Classroom to hand in assignments and interact with teachers. And so they've kind of taken that to the next level. So they were ready technologically. So they were maximizing their access to computers and technology. They were basically holding classes regularly throughout those 2 weeks. And then they were creating lesson plans for extended time, because even at that point, we knew it did not look like we were going to open up after spring break. So what they're transitioning to is weekly online instruction segments for whole class, as well as weekly office hours for teachers. And I was talking with Principal Jannard today, and he said students and even parents are accessing those weekly office hours to ask questions and to interact with their teachers. They have given guidelines regarding the amount of work and daily screen time so that the students aren't overwhelmed. And then they are also getting support from their RSP teacher and paraeducators to help supplement the curriculum, reach out to those students with IEPs to make sure they feel supported to meet the goals that they need to, both in their IEP and academically. Is this the fifth one? Just making sure I'm on track. Okay. After this one, we'll switch it over to Chris. So Epic started the first 2 weeks with packets for instructions in K3 and Google Classroom in 4A. They had enough computers or technology, Chromebooks, to share with families and hand out to them to be ready. They also were working on distributing Chromebooks and making sure students had access to that at home who didn't have access, and then options to increase online instructional for K3 as well. So what they're transitioning to is increase those opportunities for online learning for all grade levels. These are programs that they were already using. Success Maker is something that they were already using. Pearson is a curriculum that has both hard copy and online. Scholastic as well has online and digital. Khan Academy videos and Newsella, which they were already using as well. So really nothing new, but they were just augmenting it with more lessons and ways for students to access it. They're doing frequent check-ins with most vulnerable students to make sure that they are getting high levels of participation at home. And then they also are increasing the level of instructional materials aligned to the IB units that they were doing. It is much harder. We've talked with also Principal Takoy. It is much harder to do IB when you're not with those students every day. But they're still trying to look for ways to incorporate IB ideas and ideals throughout, because they know it's a core part of what they do. So all of our schools, I can't affirm them enough for the work they put in prior to the break and the work they're continuing to do, refine, get feedback, and make sure that they're serving students in the best way they can. I'll turn it over to Chris.
Thank you, Michael. I'm going to start with Futures High School. They had started with sort of the concept of Google Classroom and looking at modifying assignments, but more importantly, making sure that everybody had access to the technology they need, the internet, being able to access those classroom materials, both from the student side and the teacher side. So now that those have sort of been worked through, then they're going to move now into really looking at, so what does our core curriculum look like in a digital delivery? How do we supplement that to ensure that our students are being able to earn those credits that they need? Because we know this is, such a pivotal time for our high school students. They had previously been using Fuel Education, so now they're trying to see how and what that could look like with even more use and being able to provide those appropriate supports, supporting our English learners, our special education students in this new environment. And then a lot of the work that they've just started to do using our Aries communication platform is how can they continue to provide that additional support and outreach. The reality with our high school students is so many of them are also supporting other children in the home, or their parents are trying to work at home. And so they're having to do a lot of balance. So then where do the counselors and our parent liaisons, how do we can help them support those students to be able to do that work? So GIS, as Michael mentioned, is also trying to figure out what it looks like to do that IB program in a virtual environment. I have to affirm Ms. Takoy and her team, they really spent that first Monday that we knew we needed to plan for this, spending some time with all their teachers to make sure that they understood the digital platforms so that the teachers had confidence in those platforms and then could then support their families and their students. So making sure then after that teacher confidence, what does that look like for our families? Can they access the internet? Do they have access to Chromebooks? If they didn't, how can we get them to school to get one? So they're moving more as everyone's confidence has improved into Google Classroom, Class Dojo for the younger grades. And then I think the work that they've spent a lot of time on and is very detailed, and you'll see that when we bring that to you later, is really what are the expectations by grade levels. They did a great job looking at their parent and student feedback and really listening to their stakeholders about what does it mean for me to, as a parent, teach my child at home, as a student to have access, and then also from their teachers to develop content. So they took that into heart as they're transitioning into more specific guidelines. Another piece that came out of that survey was what screen time looked like. So they had a lot of conversation as a team so they could really decide. they're trying to figure out how and what do end of year assessments. They're starting to figure those pieces out, and then really pulling all those specialty teachers in to make sure that they too are communicating with families and have access, whether it be as office hours or actually inside of the Google Classroom, so that they can monitor students' work. So with HLA, they really started the hard copy packet piece, similarly to what you heard with COA Elementary, and then gathering online resources, and then starting to distribute packets in Chromebooks, and just really sort of laid a foundation. But more importantly, they wanted to make sure that they were connecting their families and keeping that school spirit alive. So they've shared some great little notes. Teachers are sending notes to families. They're connecting with different activities and spirit days to try to make students feel like they're still part of that school environment. And then as they begin to transition to a longer term process, Google Classroom, Class Dojo, which you've heard about perform, what does it look like at each grade level for weekly activities? How do they find that balance? So there's a combination of those hard copy and online resources. And again, things that students have used before, whether it be their Pearson material or their Mystery Science, but then also Khan Academy to give them some extra digital supports if they need it. Teachers have office hours and lab hours for students and parents to access. And then they, as a team, have developed sort of a weekly check-in model for their vulnerable students that aren't participating, or maybe were participating really well at the beginning and then now have fallen off, and making sure that they're continuing to move forward. And then our Saba team, because they live in an environment where they sort of had this sort of digital component as so much a part of what they did, it was really a little less of a transition for them because of the fact that students are used to using Edgenuity. What they had to figure out then was, how did we move from that regular face-to-face check-in time into that digital time? So that's what they're moving now. They truly have increased their mental health supports with their social workers. They're making sure that those contacts are being made regularly. They have done and developed lots of resources for families to support any housing needs or food needs. If they have students that they know were already homeless, they're coming back to those students to make sure that they have some regular housing and that they're being taken care of. And most recently, the school nurse shared with me that the staff had learned that one of those homeless youth had been sick, and making sure that they were able to get to the doctor and do some of those pieces or have contact with our health staff. So, but I think the one piece that I want to share that we learned about today, you'll notice they're developing a way to model those CTE courses. Ashley shared in our meeting earlier today that their photography teacher had a chance to do a Zoom meeting with a famous photographer who was part of their curriculum. And so talk about looking forward to a great opportunity for students that they may not have had, and really being able to be inspired by having that direct contact with that really well-known photographer that they had read about, but now they got to see and interact with them in a Zoom meeting. I hear also that the culinary group is doing some Iron Chef-like competitions. So creativity is definitely coming into play. And then finally, what does it look like next? What will, as Michael mentioned, we're going to bring to you some packets that and some guidelines that are in a little more detail. Not sure where our final slide went, but that will talk about what are those more specific plans by grade level. Finally, summer school. I think our reality, as Dr. Peterson has shared many times, is we don't want our students to fall behind, and we probably need to look at what would summer school look like, even if it has to be done virtually, and how do we continue to support our students and families. And then looking to the fall, will we come back to school the way it looked like before we left? How will we process enrollment? What will the start of school look like? And then our last bullet, it seems like every day we have a new way and a new different challenge, but it's going to be okay. And we have an amazing team of administrators and teachers and families and students and a community that is wrapping around and supporting each other through this work.
Okay, very nicely done. Both Michael and Christine want to definitely affirm them both. And as you can see, I know that you were very complimentary during the superintendent's presentation, but this is even bigger, more, and it's everyone, and it's the entire site. And it has been a tremendous amount of work. And do want to say that last slide, I just want you to not ask for details, just process. We're going to bring you information. So as Christine has said, I told everyone today in our principal meeting, we will be doing summer school, but we will be looking for creative, innovative ways to do it, really focused in on core learning necessary to start next year successfully. And you know, they are going to be the experts at how they create that and what it needs to look like, and we're going to support them to do that. And then as she alluded to, and we really don't want to get into the details because not much is available. Next year is going to look different. There are discussions about social distancing practices still being in place when we start school, and how are we going to do that in our current facilities, and cleaning will be done deeply and more often, and how will we ensure that, and you know, how do we take care of our vulnerable populations that may still be sheltering in place. And we just want you to know we are hearing those conversations, we are aware, we're seeking answers, we're seeking solutions, and they will all come to you, but not today, because nobody knows today. Just like we said, got off of the Access Superintendent Council, no one there had any answers. They had a lot of things they're discussing with a lot of people, and we all have a lot of questions, but answers are not yet on the table. So thank you, Michael and Christine.
And on behalf of the board, Michael and Christine, thank you so much for the information, because it does give us a clear view of what's happening in the schools with online distant learning. So thank you.
And can I add just one other observation, and that came up. There are schools in Sacramento, school districts, that haven't even started their distance learning yet. We are already a good month in and going deeper. So again, much to be proud of.
Board members?
Bruce has his hand
Board member
raised.
Bruce?
Yeah.
Yes.
We're just getting here. There he
Okay,
is.
getting unmuted. What are we doing with meals? Are we doing anything?
We are not serving meals because we have never been our own meal provider before, but we are sharing with the various schools all of the information about food services that are available. So in other words, Twin Rivers is really our provider for most all of our schools. So we have given them the map of all of the Twin Rivers locations and timing and how they can get that. And Twin Rivers is, you know, clear that that's, you know, their obligation. But we've also given those that live in the Elk Grove area, the Elk Grove, because it's any student, any child who needs food can get food right now. So we've given them the Elk Grove, we've given them the West Sacramento, Yolo County, certainly Sac City information. So we have, if you went on our webpage, we have a huge amount of information there, and not just the school districts, but the faith-based and nonprofits that are providing food and other resources. So we have been, I think, well resourced, and Jason and his team have done a great work with sharing all of that information.
Board members, any other comments? Yes,
Go ahead,
Mark.
I think you guys are doing a great job. I'm sure this is very, very stressful for the entire staff to pull this off. In regards to, and again, I'm not trying to get into the weeds because like you said, Cindy, we don't have a lot of information, but what are we doing, or can you enlighten me at all about what we're doing with graduates, high school graduates? Are they most likely going to have to continue doing summer school in order to meet their qualifications to be able to graduate?
I would say that is a probable no. So I would say predominantly we're doing a hold harmless approach, and part of that will be brought to the board in the next reiteration of plans. And so far, what we've asked the 4 high schools to do is to come with their own plan of how they want to approach that. But we have set the ground rule that we want it to be a hold harmless approach, in the sense that if they were on track to graduate and their grade was passing on March 13th, we want to find a way, without overtly telling them that yet, that you will be okay. You will get that grade and the credit for that semester and be able, because you were on track to graduate with that, and you will graduate. The only ones that would not would be ones who on that date were not on track to graduate and have since not put any effort, not tried. We can't get them. There may still be, which in my estimation, that's somebody, if you were not on track before, you probably were going to have to go to summer school or something to complete anyway. So it's still a hold harmless. Some districts across the state are going to credit no credit instead of grades, or pass fail, if you will. At this point, I am asking the 4 high schools for their preference, but letting them know clearly it is not my preference, okay? Because pass fail is something that will follow them in terms of their grade point average, and through a number of things. And even though the colleges and universities say they will cope with this, if we do not have to do that, I don't want to do that. I think that is primarily being driven by teachers unions who don't want to do a lot of grading right now in that system. So it's a long answer to say, I don't think we'll have a longer and more robust summer school than we would have otherwise had for graduates. Does that answer your question, Mark?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
And there's one thing that I did mention, I think it was from Dr. McCormick, when you mentioned the too much schoolwork, that has been an issue since we've been online, virtual online, that some of the students were saying we're getting too much work because so many teachers were piling it on. So I'm glad you're noticing that and looking at what can be done for that. So thank you for that.
And I would say a good deal of that is about elementary. So elementary level is where we have the, mom at home with 3 or 4 small kids, and, each of them is supposed to be online, 2.5 hours each and doing 6 different topics. And we haven't had that kind of feedback, I believe, in the high school level, because it's so much more self-directed, right? It's not so much on the parent as it's on the student, but it's still a matter of, even for ourselves here in this environment, we've all of us been on Zoom all day because of principal meetings and other things. It's exhausting in this format. And so we have to be careful of what exhausts and takes from us, that we at the same level don't ask that of the teachers to do that all day, and the students be doing that at a level that just doesn't sustain itself.
Right. Okay, thank you. If there are no other comments, we will move to the next study session, which is budget. Yes, budget implication for COVID-19.
Mr. Business is so excited to have the chance to talk to you today. He put on a tie for the first time in a month just for you today.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon,
Good
President
afternoon.
Campbell, members of the board. So I'm here today to talk about the budget implications that we may be seeing from the pandemic on the state and the GCC. So if I can go to the next slide, which, see if I can do that.
You were.
Okay, so first of all, just want to start off with just some good things.
Sorry, can I just ask? Oh, there we go. So who is managing the slides? Is Aaron doing that?
I'm trying to. I don't know. It's not responding very.
Well, it's responding and then over responding. And so I'm sorry to interrupt, but Jason, is it possible that it might be more efficient for you to just have Aaron tell you when he wants to advance, and then we wouldn't have the doing and the undoing?
Oh, that's fine. We can do that.
Okay, so he wants to be on the second slide right now.
Thanks. So just first of all, some good things. Saba, Sac City Unified, and Saba Elk Grove Unified were approved for 100% funding level for the non-classroom based funding determination through fiscal year 21-22. So that's really good news. We were kind of up in the air on that. We were concerned that they were going to have a 15% funding cut on that. So that's good. And then we have some planned April and May expenditure savings because we have no extra duty pay going on or no short-term substitute pay. Field trips have been canceled. Travel and conferences have been canceled throughout the rest of the year. And so we have some savings from those areas. So that's kind of a little bit of a silver lining to this. And then we are accelerating our construction project timelines. So we don't have to wait until the summer now to begin some of these projects. We're trying to get them done as fast as we can. And then one of the other good things is the state reserves and also even the GCC reserves are good going into this recession. And then minor COVID-19 funding has already been allocated from the state to all of the school districts and to our charters that are classroom based for cleaning and protective equipment. And then next slide. So unfortunately, there are still a lot of unknowns at this time. We've been hearing from some of the school business experts in the state, some things already, but many details will come out of the May revise. And then there'll probably be even details after the May revise. We may have to wait until August, September for even more budgetary information because the state is going in blind on this. Income tax collections won't happen. They've been delayed until July 15th. And so that's creating a harder budget forecast for the state. It makes the June budget a preliminary budget. Capital advisors, they are estimating that a 0% COLA is a best case scenario going into next year. Previously, we were at, I think it was a little over 2% on the January budget as a COLA. All categoricals and special ed increases are probably going to be off the table because of this. And we may even see deferrals happen, a return of the deferrals that we had many years ago. It may be, you know, a June to July short-term deferral just in order to make an easy budget cut by shifting the funds into the next year. But we don't really have much information at this time on what that's going to look like or how intense or long any deferrals would be. Good news is we do have a very good cash reserve going into this, and we also have an additional line of credit for that if we need it. Okay, next slide. Some of the things the state may also do is maybe give some possible flexibility. You know, maybe hopefully we can get some LCAP flexibility, maybe some flexibility on the supplemental and concentration funding. Also federal grants. I think just a few minutes ago, CDE just announced that there will be additional time to spend some of the federal grants we receive. Some of the carryover provisions have been waived. Like for Title I, there's normally a 15% carryover limit to the next year. That's being waived. And spend, you know, we usually don't have until September 30th to spend certain federal grants, and that looks like that's being waived as well. So, excuse me. So SB 740 facilities funding. Unfortunately, this grant for our rent for COA and EPIC and GIS also gets a little bit of that funding. That was already oversubscribed in this year before the pandemic even broke out, and it wasn't given a COLA increase for this fiscal year, just probably because a lot of the anti-charter sentiment from the governor's budget. But unfortunately, it's just announced that that grant will be coming in worse than we expected in terms of its funding. Now there will be no funding for any costs other than rent on that grant. We were hoping just for at least like about a 10% funding level on the other costs. And then only 95% of rent will be funded now. And so because it's already oversubscribed, and I'm sure it won't get an increase for next year, it'll likely be worse. And so this will have the biggest impact will be on COA Elementary. I think they're already going to take about $100,000 hit on this now, just for this year. And EPIC was, I think, a smaller amount, probably about 60,000. So that will be, an issue going into next year as well. Okay, can you go to the next slide? So some possible impacts. There'll be a need for more extensive summer school options to close learning gaps. Enrollment projections, we're going to be more conservative with our enrollment projections because, possible mobility of students going out of the state, going to maybe, moving to lower cost of living type of states because of, this economic upheaval, much like the Great Recession. And then there's been some discussion of fall social distancing strategies to include lower class sizes, morning and afternoon sessions, distance learning options, so that we don't have, everyone at school at the same time. And how will we deal with that? And will that create extra costs as well at the same time? Okay, next slide. So, any questions at this time?
We need to stop sharing so we can see everybody.
Yeah. Thank you. Any questions, board members? I see no hands raised.
Can I just add a little editorial? So I did have a long conversation with Eric Premack of Charter School Development Center this morning on many of these same topics, as well as having the Access Superintendent's Council meeting. Neither one of those I had time to debrief with Aaron yet. So it underscored much of what we have in that report there. Again, without a lot of answers, but a lot of concerns. And one of those things that was mentioned by Eric that I, am concerned about is we have been hearing the language from the governor and others that when we closed school, we were held harmless in our funding, and that we were being held harmless so that we would continue to pay our employees and our contractors, et cetera, which we have done. And Eric's opinion was that that may not be exactly what was said, that what was said was that our ADA was held harmless. And that it's possible we may have a lower revenue amount per ADA just based on the severity of what this state is facing. I pray that that is just an opinion that he has that is not held other, but I am letting Mr. Business know that so that we can make it part of our plan. But we have ultimately told the principals this week, Mr. Business sent out a great memo to everybody. No spending that is not necessary spending at this time. And nothing next year that's not of the most essential of nature at this time. Let's conserve what we have to prepare for what we don't know about. And we have received zero pushback from our sites. They're very understanding. And, you know, they too are where I believe this board is. Our number one priority is students and their outcomes. But along with that, of equal nature, is our priority to save jobs of all of our people, if at all possible. And so that's right now what we are assuring them that you want as well as that we want. So.
And that is the consensus. Yes.
Mark
Mark.
Anderson.
I have him. Mark.
Just interested to know, have you heard any conversations about how much we're tapping into this rainy day fund that the state has, and will that possibly be a way of propping up ADA?
It is being discussed. It's just that we've gone so deep into the shutdown that in the beginning, I think, and Aaron can correct me if I'm wrong, in the beginning it was like, oh yeah, we've got a rainy day fund, we're going to be fine. And now, you know, with all the extra costs and what we think will be, you know, extra impacts, I'm not hearing that level of optimism about how it will or won't protect us. How about yourself, Aaron? What have you been hearing?
Yeah, I haven't really heard much of anything further. And it's just that a lot of that surplus or that budget rainy day fund is not specifically earmarked for education either. So I think the education had a very small rainy day fund that's not even enough, you know, to support it through a recession. So
we had Jack
Board
Turner.
Member Turner and then Board Member Bruce. Okay. Board Member Turner.
Let's get his microphone first. Jason, are you? There you go.
Okay. Yes, are we going ahead with the cost of living increases that we approved several board meetings ago?
I don't think we can afford not to. I think it was a commitment we made. I think, yeah, I think we have to stand with commitments we make like that. So
yeah,
has not even been a
Very
consideration. Good. Yeah, and it's not even on the table to consider.
Board
and
member,
then Bruce. Yeah.
Bruce.
I was just the B had an article this morning on the state's rainy day fund that essentially said that it's pretty well committed in terms of all of the extra costs that they're going out with. So yes, I think it's really going to help, but only up to a point until it's gone. And then we're in tough, you know, they're not getting much sales tax. They're not getting a lot of their taxes. So it could be difficult.
I agree with you, Bruce. I was going to mention that that it was in the paper this morning that the rainy day fund is being utilized and it's going slowly away from what was expected. So
what I do want you to hear is that between Mr. Business and I, we are attending and listening to everything we can get our hands on to be aware of what is known and to make the best decisions that we can. I have heard what I think I heard Aaron say, that the lobbyists for AXA feel that we're going to get some LCAP flexibility. What they are actually spending a good deal of their lobbying and petitioning time on now is trying to get some pension relief. Is what they're looking for right now. I think a lot of that pension and special education and some of what we're going to hear later about how we're needing to change our special education. You know, the traditional environment is experiencing that with some deal of worry about litigation, of course, and how not meeting timelines might create a financial obligation on their part for more compensatory education, but also legal people suing, a lot of suing and energy and legal costs. So, Madam President, are you okay if we move to the next study session?
yes, I am, but I just want to thank Mr. Thornsberry for his report and his work bringing it to the board. So we really appreciate your keeping us updated and what's going on financially in this world. So thank you.
Thank you.
And your staff who has been working with you. We really appreciate the efforts that you put in. And now we're ready to move to the next item, which is special education service update. And I'm
That's
assuming it's Dr. McCormick.
Dr. McCormick it is.
All right, waiting for a slide to come up. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, members of the board. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. I am sure you have heard plenty in the news on the concerns about serving, our special education students, as well as caring for some of our highest at promise youth that already were struggling to be able to access their education. So I just wanted to give you just a brief overview of how we are providing those services. We work with some great contract providers who immediately said, how can we support providing services? This is our speech, our occupational therapy, our deaf and hard of hearing teachers. They have all transferred to a virtual platform, which is great. Puts us in a great position to not have to worry about compensatory services once we can have face-to-face. All of our case managers are in great partnerships with general education teachers, whether that means they're a member of their Google Classroom so that they can monitor students' work, or are part of the development of those sort of other packets, or members of the class dojo. So that has been really nice, good partnerships that they've been doing. And then our school psychologists are providing social, emotional, and technical supports, not only to our case managers, but to teachers and to administrators, to make sure that we're providing all the sort of the other pieces that we need to do to serve our youth, and to think creatively and differently about how we provide services to our special education students. We will soon begin virtual IEPs, which will be a new and interesting challenge, but we will find a way. And I absolutely believe that all my special ed teachers and providers will just make it work, as well as they have made everything work along the way. So for our homeless and foster youth, the Sacramento and Yolo County Office of Education have always been partner liaisons with us, but they really truly have stepped up the amount of resources that they've shared. If we need to find a motel voucher for a family, they are immediately there to help us find ways and supports for our families, which has been really nice. And then our counselors and our social workers, depending on what they have on a campus, have created some great connections to local agencies. We put together sort of a student support resource page that we share things on, and then Jason and his team have resources. So it really has been quite a partnership to really look at all of these students and being able to serve them. So, there's my summary.
Oh, that's it?
That's it.
We just knew that this is a topic, again, you're reading in the paper, you're hearing about people's concerns, and I just definitely wanted the board to hear that Dr. McCormick has been on top of this with her team from day one, and I believe is doing an amazing job. So.
And may I further with that, I got a call from AXA, and they're looking at particularly special education and how to meet the needs of students and where we could go in terms of webinars. And I did indicate, Dr. McCormick, that you were a resource that could be utilized in terms of what we're doing and what the state is doing and how we're meeting the IEPs, because of the fact that, as you mentioned, Dr. Peterson, the lawsuits, if we're not meeting the needs of the students in the IEP. So that is one of the areas that is really a big concern with the AXA member services. So thank you again for that update. All right. Any other comments from board members? Not seeing any. And the next one is update on transitioning education services contracts.
The Assistant Superintendent Gillespie will address this one.
Sure. I just wanted to update the board on our outside service providers. If you want to go to the next slide, Jason. We are, the SB 117 included language that provided emergency relief to school districts, County Office of Ed, and charter schools. But it also included, and as Cindy alluded to, Dr. Peterson alluded to, it said we would be held harmless. And it also said that explicitly stated the intent of LEAs receiving such funding, right, that their employees and contractors are compensated and paid during this period. So what does that mean? No one really knows, unfortunately. We have gotten some legal recommendations on how to handle this. Aaron Thornsberry has reached out to his circle of peers in the CBO world, but basically there's no specific clarity to the rule. And so what we are doing is we are working with all of our outside service providers on a case-by-case basis to try to resolve this issue. So I'm going to highlight it in the next slide, sort of a couple of things that are happening. Go ahead, Jason. So what we are trying to do in order to accomplish both meeting the contracts that the contractors have said they would provide with us, and also our seeming obligation to help hold them harmless, is we are adapting services so that any meetings that were happening before in person are going to be happening virtually. So those services and activities can still continue. We are also taking what normally might have been a full day of service with some of our providers and spreading that over time. They are recommending to not have Zoom meetings for more than 2 hours, or people really tune out and find it very difficult to focus. Also our providers so we have some providers at our school sites, such as mental health supports, mentors that we were paying from CCCS and some other, they are actually able to reach out through the school to contact students and offer mental health supports, social work supports, and counseling supports via Zoom or Google. And then, as we know, we have many projects that are happening already that were already in line to happen at COA Middle School, at HLA Futures, and even some of our other campuses. And those projects are, like at EPIC, GIS, those are being pushed up so that hopefully we'll be able to accomplish them in an even quicker time, and those will still continue. Jason? So we have, I do want to highlight, we have some very significant partners that we've been working with over the last 3 to 4 years. And so these are people who we've spent lots of time with and lots of funding to support the coherence goals that the GCC has that fall in line with our blueprint. And so Future Management Systems, Lyle Kirkman, what we've done is, again, we've taken the days that he has left, and Dr. Peterson and I worked with him to alter those services to provide more direct services and supports to our principals around leadership during this time of school closure, during this time of COVID, to support them in their leadership capacity as they support their schools and families. And then Innovate Ed, which is one of our larger contracts, that's the work we've been doing around coherence and coherent instructional framework, as well as cycles of inquiry. And Wendy York Davoud is one of our major partners through this, and Tiffany Walker. And we still had around 11 days left on that contract. And so again, we've done the same thing. We've customized it to support each school site individually so that they can accomplish maybe not all of the goals we would have if we were together, but some of the goals, and to really start planning for next year. And then finally, Flippin Group, which is our CKH, our friends at CKH, and Jeff Thorpe, who we've been working with over 8 years now. Really, he only had a couple of days left, and those were really designated as supports for Saba. So I attended a webinar with him and the Saba leadership staff this week, which was really motivational. And the Saba staff came away very excited about the resources he shared, the strategies that Flippin Group is pushing out every Monday to principals. And he's also going to be following up one-on-one with some of the administrators at Saba to continue to support their implementation of CKH in this virtual world. So we just wanted to highlight that all of our providers are unique, and all the contractors that we work with, many of them we have long-term partnerships. And so we wanted to make sure we tried to figure out ways that, yes, they were continuing to serve our students and families, but that we would also get some service for the funding that we allocated for their contracts. So again, we are working on this on a case-by-case basis, but we're hoping to make sure we resolve it to the satisfaction of both the GCC and our contractors.
You've done a great job of reaching out and then utilizing the partnership that we already have in place. So that's great. Board members, any comments, hands? Okay. All right, hearing none, we will move on. Thank you, Michael. That was great to
Great
see
job,
where we are
Michael.
at this point. Great job. All right. We are now down to the consent agenda items, and I will go through each one. Adoption of the minutes of the March 12th meeting. Adoption of the minutes from March the 16th emergency board meeting. Adoption of the minutes of the March 18th special board meeting. Personnel consent agenda items, personnel consent agenda. Financial, attachment would be, the next one would be revised GCC board policy, suspension and expulsion. Purchases over 30,000. I thought I missed that one. And that's it for the consent agenda items before business. So at this point, at this time, I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda items.
Bruce has his hand raised.
Bruce Mandrick
Also move.
shall move.
Jack Turner.
Jack Turner.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. And now I will do roll call for your yay or nay. Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Block,
Yes.
Board Member Mandrick,
Yes.
Board Member Turner,
Yes.
Board Member Campbell, yes. Unanimously approve approval of the consent agenda items. Thank you. The next item is under business. Resolution to approve use of educational protection account funds for fiscal year 2019, 2020. And so,
Mr. Business will provide an
Business,
explanation for the
okay.
board.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is actually required each year for use of the education protection account funds by the state, that we have a resolution and to show how each charter is spending those funds.
Mhm.
And so in the attachments to the agenda, we have the resolution and then just a budget showing which functional areas we're spending those on, which is mostly teacher salaries and benefits, and some amounts for our charters that are still getting special education services with Twin Rivers. Some of the costs to Twin Rivers for those services are also included in this budget, and a small amount of supplies as well.
Okay, do we have any questions from Mr. Aaron at this point? Okay, hearing no questions, then I will entertain a motion to approve.
Jack Turner. Jack Turner has his hand raised.
Yes, Mr. Turner.
I move approval.
Mark
Okay.
Anderson has
Mark
his.
Anderson.
Second.
It has been moved in second. Roll call vote. Mr. Anderson.
Yes.
Block.
Yes.
Mr. Mandrick.
Yes.
Mr. Turner.
Yes.
Campbell, yes. We have a unanimous 5 yeses for the resolution to approve use of education protection funds. And so with that, that's it. We have it unanimously approved for that item. Thank you, board members. All right. Okay. I guess we are now down to getting ready to close. We'll have
7.2, item 7.2.
I beg your pardon?
I have an item 7.2 on the agenda.
7.2. I am sorry, you do. Data cost offset stipend.
So let me
Would you
let me
please?
take that for the board.
Okay.
So upon the school closure and everyone going to the continuity of learning or learning from home environment, along with the central office transitioning to work from home, we recognized we were asking a lot of our employees, since they were going to be on their internet a lot more. Some of them might be using data plans that they did not know was going to have that much traffic on it, so to speak. We decided early on, as a show of support for our all of our employees, because even our classified employees, we are asking to do distance learning in terms of working from home and or supporting the learning and mentoring, et cetera. So we created what is called the data cost offset stipend for employees and committed to them that we would pay them $30 for the month of April and $30 for the month of May, knowing that this is not a dollar for dollar, or nor was it ever meant to be a dollar for dollar. It is merely a way to show everyone we understand that internet sometimes has an impact on budgets. We are living in a world right now where there actually is quite a lot of free internet out there and quite a lot of cheap internet out there, but that may or may not be the experience that our particular employees have, because that kind of depends on if you already had your service or not. Regardless of any of that, as most of you can feel, it was taken in the manner it was intended. It was a way to say, we see, we recognize, and we want to help you in this world that you have been shoved into, so to speak. So it's $30 a month for April, $30 a month for May at this time, and it's for all employees. And it's, as you can see, not a ton of fiscal impact, about $38,000 across all of our schools. If we move into a world where we are asking people to do summer school in the same methodology, we may revisit this for not all employees, but for those who are involved in summer school. But at this time, we're only asking the board to approve this measure of good faith that we have given out to our employees regarding their use of the internet during this time.
And I apologize. I remember seeing that, reading it, and then I just kind of looking through my iPad and forgot that was there. So thank you for calling that to my attention. And now, are there any questions?
Can I just say, we do seem to have lost a board member.
Yes, I
And
was going to say.
I don't know if you want to wait before you ask for the motion to see if we can get board member Block back on. Could we just kind of all sit in our space for a moment while we see if we can get him? I don't want him to be excluded.
Okay, and he's dark completely, so.
Yeah, Jason is reaching out to him. The last time this happened, he kind of got bounced off and we just brought him back in. So it may just take a moment if we can be patient.
Can we?
I can tell that Jason is talking to him, but I can't read lips, so I don't know what he's saying.
Dr. Peterson and Madam President, Mr. Block is having technological issues, but he has said that we're more than happy to move forward.
Okay, so we're going to move forward without him, but I need the minutes then to reflect that Mr. Board Member Block was not available for voting on item 7.2.
Okay, and so I will entertain a motion if there are no other comments or questions of Dr. Peterson.
Bruce has his hand raised.
Bruce?
Also move.
Shall move. And
Mark Anderson?
Second. It has been moved in second, and I will now call for the vote. Call for Mark Anderson?
Yes.
And Ms. Blanc is absent. Bruce Mandrick?
Yes.
Jack Turner?
Yes.
Lily Campbell, yes. So 4 yeses for this approval of this item, and we're talking about $60 per employee. Thank you so much for bringing it back to me. And now we are at the conclusion of our board meeting, and I will entertain board comments from any of our board members. Yes, Mr. Anderson.
I just want to thank the entire staff for pulling this off. This is very difficult. The reports were well thought out, lots of information. I had mentioned to Jason in a previous email, I think we should consider this the board's distance learning and maybe share that with the rest of the GCC staff that we're actually participating in what we're asking them to do.
We
I
did tell
agree.
them, we told them today at the principals meeting. So we did tell them how you guys were all stepping up to this new challenge.
A little nervous too, to make sure we get it right. Any other comments, board members? And
Jack Turner has his
Jack
hand.
Turner. Thank you, Mr. Turner.
Yes, it was a really very, very informative meeting, and to also support Mark's statement. I really appreciate the support of the staff in these trying times. And I will try to upgrade my technology skills because they are certainly deficient. So anyway, I really appreciate it, and it was informative, and I'm glad to hear that we're doing so well and generally healthy.
Generally healthy. Any other comments? And again, I want to emphasize what I've said before, how much I appreciate all of the information that you have been sending to us on a weekly basis, keeping us informed of where you are and what's happening in the organization. So I really, truly appreciate all of the hard work. And Ms. Contreras, thank you so much for being here with us. I think we have not given you the accolades, the affirmation that you need for being with us. And I really appreciate your coming in and taking over the new duties and all of that. So thank you so much. Anything else, board members? Our next board meeting. Oh, do you have comments?
Bruce is just saying thumbs up.
Thank you. Thumbs up.
Doing good.
All right.
Okay.
The next board meeting is scheduled for?
I have April 28th. That's what Ms. Contreras says as well. Tuesday, April 28th. It does say in my schedule tentatively at Epic, which is of course not going to happen. But we will resend out that board meeting with this Zoom information that you need.
Okay.
In the board item. Okay, Ms. Contreras, and then that way you will have that. But at this time, I would suspect that there will be plenty for us to do. I also believe that is the first night of our annual school board reports. I think it is Saba and CCCS possibly on that. So they are prepared to use Zoom to wow you with their annual school board reports. And thereafter, I believe it is something like 2 per meeting from there until the end of the school year.
To the end of school year. All right. Okay. Is there anything else for the good of the organization? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
So moved.
Bruce?
And a second. All in
Second.
favor? I beg your pardon?
Jack says he will do the second.
You
He
do
and,
the second,
Mark were
okay.
vying for it. But
All
yes.
right. I will do Anderson,
Yes.
Block, not absent. Mandrick,
Yes.
Turner, and Campbell.
Yes.
Yes. The meeting is now adjourned. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, everyone.
Gee, that
Thank you
sounded
For
like a
the
gavel.
technical.
I've got to get a gavel next time.
Yeah. I'm sorry.